Eliza Edwards stared at the dusty platform of the Piñon, Arizona Territory train station, her heart pounding against her corset as she clutched her single valise. The year was 1882, and she had just traveled nearly 2,000 miles to marry a man she'd never met, carrying secrets that no proper lady should possess. The scorching August sun beat down on her traveling bonnet as she scanned the small crowd gathered at the station. Her advertisement response had been clear: she was to look for a tall man in a brown Stetson holding a sign with her name. The letter from Adam O'Malley had been courteous if brief, explaining he needed a wife to help manage his cattle ranch outside town. What he didn't know was that Eliza was running from more than just the limited prospects for women in Boston. "Miss Edwards." The deep voice startled her, and she turned to face a broad-shouldered man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His brown Stetson was pushed back slightly, revealing hair the color of wheat. He held a small wooden sign with E. Edwards carved neatly into it. "Mr. O'Malley, I presume?" Eliza extended her gloved hand, studying the man who was to be her husband. Adam O'Malley took her hand with unexpected gentleness for a man whose palms bore the calluses of hard labor. "Welcome to Piñon. Hope your journey wasn't too uncomfortable." "It was quite educational," Eliza replied diplomatically, not mentioning the 3 attempted robberies she'd thwarted during her journey, nor how she'd helped deliver a baby in the train car just east of Albuquerque. Adam's eyes narrowed slightly at her choice of words, but he nodded and reached for her bag. "Ranch is about 8 miles out. We'll stop in town for supplies if you need anything." "I believe I packed everything necessary." Eliza followed him to a wagon that had seen better days, but appeared sturdy enough. Adam helped her onto the wooden seat before climbing up beside her. The proximity to this stranger who would soon be her husband sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. He smelled of leather, sunshine, and something distinctly male that made her pulse quicken despite her determination to remain practical about this arrangement. "Town's small but growing," Adam commented as he guided the horses down the dusty main street. "Got a general store, saloon, church, doctor's office. Sheriff's a good man when he's sober." Eliza observed the frontier town with keen interest. Women in practical frontier dress nodded politely as they passed. Men tipped their hats, their curious glances lingering on the newcomer. "Are you disappointed?" Adam asked suddenly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Pardon me. With what you see, with me?" His jawline tightened. "Some ladies have expectations that don't match the reality out here." Eliza considered the man beside her. He was handsome in a rugged way, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of squinting against the harsh sun. His hands were strong, capable. There was nothing deceptive in his advertisement. He'd promised a working ranch, not a palace. "I came west for a purpose, Mr. O'Malley. I understand the conditions and am prepared for them." Something in her tone made him turn to study her more carefully. "Most women would be crying by now, seeing how far we are from civilization." "I am not most women," she replied simply. Adam's mouth quirked into something almost resembling a smile. "I'm beginning to see that, Miss Edwards." They rode in silence past the edge of town, the landscape opening into vast stretches of rugged terrain. The beauty of it caught Eliza's breath: the distant mountains, the scattered juniper and piñon trees, the endless sky. It was so different from Boston's crowded streets. "You ever fired a gun, Miss Edwards?" Adam asked casually. Eliza hesitated only a moment. "I have." He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment further. "Is that a problem?" she asked. "No," he said after a moment. "Might be useful out here. Rattlesnakes, coyotes, sometimes worse." "You'll find I'm adaptable, Mr. O'Malley." The wagon crested a small rise and Adam pulled the horses to a stop. There it is, O'Malley Ranch. Below them sprawled a modest but well-maintained property. A two-story wooden house sat centered on the land with a barn, corral, and several outbuildings nearby. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures, and a creek cut through the western edge of the property. "It's lovely," Eliza said honestly. "It's work," Adam replied, but his pride was evident in his voice. "Every inch of it." As they approached the house, Eliza noticed a gray-haired woman emerge onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "That's Mrs. Holloway," Adam explained. "She helps with the house. Comes 3 days a week from town. Wanted everything ready for your arrival." The thought that he'd made preparations for her comfort touched Eliza unexpectedly. When they reached the house, Adam jumped down and came around to help her from the wagon. As he lifted his hands to her waist, their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved. Something electric passed between them before he gently set her on the ground. "Mrs. Holloway, this is Miss Edwards," Adam introduced as they approached the porch. The older woman beamed. "Welcome, dear. Been telling this boy for years he needs a wife. Place needs a woman's touch." "Thank you for your welcome," Eliza replied warmly. "Got dinner almost ready. Figured you'd be hungry after your trip." "That's very kind." Adam carried her valise inside, and Eliza followed, taking in what would be her new home. The main room was simply furnished but clean, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A wooden table with 6 chairs sat in the dining area, and a worn but comfortable-looking sofa faced the hearth. "Your room's upstairs," Adam said, leading the way. "Until after the wedding, I'll be staying in the back room downstairs." The bedroom was larger than Eliza had expected, with a 4-poster bed covered in a handmade quilt, a dresser with a mirror, and a washstand. Fresh wildflowers sat in a jar on the windowsill, and the window itself offered a stunning view of the rangeland. "Mrs. Holloway's doing," Adam explained, noticing her gaze on the flowers. "I'll leave you to freshen up. Dinner in half an hour." When he'd gone, Eliza sat heavily on the bed, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. She was thousands of miles from home, about to marry a stranger. Yet there was something about Adam O'Malley that intrigued her directness, an honesty she found refreshing after the polite deceptions of Boston society. From her valise, she removed a small wooden box, running her fingers over the intricate carving before opening it to reveal a Colt revolver. Next to it lay a set of surgical tools wrapped in oilskin, several packets of herbs, and a journal filled with notes in her precise handwriting. Skills her father had insisted no daughter of his should possess, yet which had saved her life more than once. She tucked the box under the bed and changed into a simpler dress more suited to a ranch dinner. Whatever Adam O'Malley expected in a wife, she suspected he was about to be surprised. Dinner was a surprisingly pleasant affair. Mrs. Holloway had prepared a hearty meal of beef stew, cornbread, and apple pie. The older woman dominated the conversation, filling the silences with stories about the area and its inhabitants that gave Eliza valuable insights into her new community. "Sheriff Blackwell's deputy caught the Hanson boy stealing again yesterday," Mrs. Holloway reported as she served the pie. "That family's been nothing but trouble since they moved in. The boy's father died in the mine collapse last year," Adam said mildly. "They're struggling." The compassion in his voice made Eliza look at him with new interest. "Well, they're struggling and they're stealing," Mrs. Holloway sniffed. "Anyway, Miss Edwards, we're having a social at the church next Sunday after services. Perfect chance for you to meet everyone." "That sounds lovely," Eliza said, though the thought of being the center of attention made her uneasy. In Boston, attention had often led to uncomfortable questions. After dinner, Mrs. Holloway departed for town, leaving Eliza and Adam alone for the first time. They sat awkwardly in the main room, the silence broken only by the ticking of a clock and the occasional pop from the fireplace. "When would you like to have the wedding?" Eliza finally asked, deciding directness was best. Adam seemed relieved at the practical question. "Preacher comes through town every other Sunday. He'll be here in 10 days. That give you enough time to prepare. That should be sufficient." Eliza hesitated before adding, "I think we should discuss expectations." Adam's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. "Seems sensible." "You advertised for a wife to help manage your ranch. I want to be clear about what that entails. I need someone to help with the household, the accounts, occasionally the ranch hands when they're injured. Someone who can be a partner." Adam's gaze was steady. "I know marriages out here often start as practical arrangements, Miss Edwards, but I hope in time we might find companionship." The hint of vulnerability in his voice touched something in Eliza. "I hope for that as well, Mr. O'Malley, and please call me Eliza." "Adam," he offered in return. "And what are your expectations, Eliza?" She chose her words carefully. "I expect to contribute meaningfully to our household. I have skills that may surprise you, but I hope you'll come to see their value. I expect honesty, respect, and the freedom to be useful in more ways than just keeping house." Adam studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "Is that disappointing?" "No," he said slowly. "Just unexpected." The next morning, Eliza woke at dawn, dressing in the simplest of her dresses and pinning her hair in a practical bun. When she descended the stairs, she found Adam already at the table drinking coffee. "Morning," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Didn't expect you up so early." "I've always been an early riser," she replied, accepting the cup of coffee he poured for her. "What are your plans for today?" "Mending fence in the north pasture. Got a steer caught in it yesterday." "Would you like help?" Adam nearly choked on his coffee. "With fence mending?" "I'm stronger than I look," Eliza said mildly. "It's not women's work. Perhaps not in Boston, but I'm in Arizona now. I didn't come all this way to sit idle while you work yourself to exhaustion." Adam stared at her for a long moment before a slow smile spread across his face. "You really are something, Eliza Edwards." He agreed to let her accompany him, though skepticism remained evident in his expression. After breakfast, they rode out together, Eliza comfortable on a gentle mare Adam had selected for her. "You ride well," he observed as they made their way across the rangeland. "My uncle owned a stable," she explained. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her uncle had indeed owned horses, though her riding skills came more from the year she'd spent with a traveling doctor, visiting remote towns too small to support a physician of their own. When they reached the damaged fence, Eliza dismounted without waiting for assistance and surveyed the broken rails and loose wire. "I'll hold the post steady while you hammer," she offered, rolling up her sleeves. Adam looked like he might object, then shrugged and handed her a pair of thick gloves from his saddlebag. "Don't want you getting splinters." They worked together for several hours, falling into an efficient rhythm. Eliza's strength and endurance clearly surprised Adam, whose glances grew increasingly appreciative as the morning progressed. When a particularly stubborn post refused to stay upright, Eliza studied the ground, then moved to her horse and retrieved a canteen. "The soil's too dry," she explained, pouring water strategically around the base. "It needs moisture to compact properly around the post." Adam watched with interest as her solution worked perfectly. "Where'd you learn that?" "Observation," she replied simply. Water changes the properties of soil. By midday, they'd repaired the entire section of fence. Adam wiped sweat from his brow and looked at Eliza with newfound respect. Most city women would be complaining of the heat and dust by now. I'm not most city women, she reminded him, taking a long drink from the canteen. No, you certainly are not. They ate a simple lunch of jerky and biscuits under the shade of a juniper tree, the silence between them now comfortable rather than awkward. Ranch belonged to my father, Adam said suddenly. He came out here after the war, the big one between the states, said he'd seen enough killing to last a lifetime. Yet he chose a dangerous frontier to settle on, Eliza observed. Different kind of danger out here, more honest somehow. Adam gazed across his land. He died 3 years ago. Fever took him before the doctor could get here from Flagstaff. Eliza felt a pang of professional frustration. I'm sorry. Fevers can often be managed with the right treatment. Something in her tone made Adam look at her curiously, but before he could respond, they heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. A rider approached at a gallop, the urgency evident in his pace. Adam stood immediately, hand dropping instinctively to the revolver at his hip. As the rider drew closer, Eliza could see it was a young man, perhaps 19 or 20, his face pale despite the sun. Mr. O'Malley, he called as he reined his horse to a stop. Thank God I found you. What is it, Jimmy? It's Pa. Bull got him against the corral fence. His legs all tore up and he's bleeding something fierce. Ma sent me to fetch you. You're closer than town. Adam was already moving toward his horse. I'll ride for the doctor. No time. Jimmy's voice cracked with panic. Doc Wilson's away in Tucson. Won't be back till Thursday. Eliza stepped forward. I can help. Both men turned to stare at her. Miss, no disrespect, but Jimmy began. I have medical training, Eliza interrupted firmly. More than basic first aid. If your father's bleeding severely, there isn't time to debate. Adam's eyes narrowed. What kind of medical training? The kind that could save his father's life, Eliza replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I'll explain later. After a moment of tense silence, Adam nodded. Jimmy, ride back. Tell your mother we're coming. Eliza, what do you need? My bag from the house. It's under the bed. That'll take too long. We need to go now. Then let me get it on the way. At Adam's questioning look, she added, it contains surgical instruments and medicines. The surprise on his face would have been comical under other circumstances, but he simply nodded and helped her mount her horse. They rode hard for the small homestead where Jimmy's family lived, stopping briefly at the ranch house for Eliza to retrieve her wooden box. The boy's father, Samuel Carter, was a local farmer who occasionally helped with cattle drives. His small farm was just 2 miles from O'Malley Ranch. When they arrived, they found Carter sprawled on a kitchen table, his wife pressing blood-soaked cloths against his thigh. The man's face was ashen, his breathing shallow. Let me see, Eliza said, immediately taking charge as she washed her hands in the basin Mrs. Carter provided. The wound was jagged and deep, the horn of the bull having torn through muscle and nicked the femoral artery. Without immediate intervention, the man would bleed to death. I need to suture the artery, Eliza announced, opening her case and removing surgical tools that gleamed with meticulous care. Adam, I need you to help hold him still. Mrs. Carter, I need more clean cloths, boiling water, and your strongest whiskey. No one questioned her authority as she prepared a needle and surgical thread. This will be painful, she warned Carter, who nodded weakly. Eliza worked with precise, confident movements, her hands steady as she clamped, cleaned, and sutured the damaged blood vessel. She administered a careful dose of laudanum from her supplies to help with the pain, then meticulously closed the wound layer by layer. The muscle is damaged but should heal with time and rest, she explained as she applied a poultice of herbs from her case. Keep the wound clean and change the dressing twice daily. I'll leave medicine for pain and to prevent infection." When she finally straightened, she realized Adam was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret, something between awe and wariness. "Thank you, madam," Mrs. Carter said tearfully. "Doc Wilson himself couldn't have done better. Your husband needs rest now. No weight on that leg for at least 3 weeks." Outside, as they prepared to leave, Adam finally spoke. "Where did you learn to do that?" Eliza met his gaze directly. "My father was a doctor in Boston. I assisted him from the time I was 12 years old. After he died, I continued studying privately with one of his colleagues. Women aren't allowed in medical schools. No, they aren't, which is why I had to learn unconventionally." She mounted her horse with fluid grace. "Are you going to refuse to marry me now that you know I have skills no proper lady should possess?" Adam's expression shifted, the wariness giving way to something else, respect, perhaps, and something warmer. "I think they're not skills, Eliza. I think they're gifts." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, each lost in thought. As they approached the house, the setting sun cast long shadows across the land, gilding everything in golden light. "Why did you come west?" Adam asked suddenly. "With your skills, you could have found ways to use them in the east." Eliza's hands tightened on the reins. "My father's colleague, the one who continued teaching me, was found dead in his office last year. The authorities called it robbery, but nothing was taken. A week later, I received a warning to stop practicing medicine or face the same fate." "From who?" "Another doctor who believed women had no place in medicine. He'd been trying to have my mentor discredited for years." Adam's jaw tightened. "So you ran." "I chose survival," Eliza corrected, "and a new beginning somewhere my skills might actually be appreciated rather than condemned." "And you chose a mail-order marriage. There are towns that might accept a woman doctor, especially out west where medical help is scarce." "A single woman traveling alone faces dangers of her own kind," Eliza said simply. "And your advertisement spoke of needing a partner, not just a housekeeper. I thought perhaps you might be different from other men." As they reached the house and dismounted, Adam took the reins of both horses, his fingers brushing against hers. "I'm beginning to think you might be different from other women, Eliza Edwards." The days leading up to the wedding were busy ones. Eliza settled into life at O'Malley Ranch with surprising ease, finding satisfaction in bringing order to the household accounts and learning the rhythms of ranch life. Word of her medical skills spread quickly through the small community, and several neighbors found reasons to visit, some openly seeking her advice for ailments they'd been suffering. Adam watched it all with growing admiration. Far from being disturbed by her unconventional abilities, he seemed to take pride in them. One evening, after she'd treated a ranch hand's infected hand, Adam presented her with a small leather bag. "What's this?" Eliza asked, opening it to find a collection of glass vials, each perfectly sized for her medicinal herbs. "Thought you could use something sturdier than those paper packets you've been using," he said, almost shyly. The thoughtfulness of the gift touched her deeply. "Thank you, Adam." "They're perfect." Their eyes met, and for a moment Eliza thought he might kiss her. Her breath caught in anticipation, but the moment was broken by the arrival of Mrs. Holloway with final arrangements for the wedding. The night before the ceremony, Eliza sat at her window, watching the stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky. A soft knock at her door startled her from her contemplation. "Eliza," Adam's voice was low, "may I speak with you?" She opened the door to find him standing uncertainly in the hallway, his expression serious. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No, nothing's wrong. He ran a hand through his hair. "Tomorrow we'll be married, and I wanted to be sure you're certain." This isn't exactly what you signed up for." "What do you mean? You're educated, skilled. The people here are already talking about you like you're some kind of miracle worker. You could set up as a proper doctor in a bigger town, not be tied to a rancher in this hard life." Eliza studied him, realizing with sudden clarity that beneath his confident exterior, Adam O'Malley harbored his own insecurities. "Adam," she said gently, "in Boston, I was constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid to use my skills openly, knowing there were those who believed I had no right to them. Here, in just these few days, I've been able to help people without fear. And you—" She hesitated, then continued with honesty, "You've never once made me feel like my abilities were unseemly or inappropriate. Why would I? They're part of who you are." The simplicity of his statement moved her. "That's exactly why I want to marry you tomorrow, Adam O'Malley. Because you see me, all of me, and you don't turn away." In the dim light of the hallway, she saw his eyes darken with emotion. This time, when he leaned toward her, there was no interruption. His lips met hers in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened, sending unexpected heat coursing through her. Her hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid strength beneath his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing unevenly. "I should go," Adam said reluctantly. "Before I forget, I'm trying to be a gentleman." Eliza nodded, though part of her wished he would stay. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Tomorrow," he agreed, his voice husky with promise. The wedding took place in Piñon's small white church, attended by what seemed like the entire community. Eliza wore a simple dress of pale blue silk, the one concession to finery she'd brought from Boston. Adam, in a clean black suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, watched her walk toward him with an expression of wonder that made her heart race. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, the circuit preacher speaking of partnership and mutual respect in a way that resonated deeply with both of them. When Adam slipped a simple gold band onto her finger and promised to cherish and protect her all the days of their lives, Eliza believed him with her whole heart. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher announced. "Mr. O'Malley, you may kiss your bride." Adam's kiss was gentle, but carried an undercurrent of passion that promised more to come. Around them, the community erupted in cheers and well wishes. The celebration continued at the town hall, where tables groaned under the weight of potluck offerings. Eliza found herself welcomed warmly, especially by those she'd already helped with her medical knowledge. Even Sheriff Donahue, a gruff man not known for sentimentality, offered his congratulations. "Your wife's got a good head on her shoulders, O'Malley," he said, clapping Adam on the back. "You're a lucky man." "Don't I know it?" Adam replied, his eyes finding Eliza across the room where she was deep in conversation with the blacksmith's wife about her chronic headaches. Later, as they danced to the music of a fiddle and harmonica, Adam held her close, his hand warm at the small of her back. "Happy Mrs. O'Malley," he murmured against her hair. The name, her new name, sent a thrill through her. "Very happy, Mr. O'Malley." As the celebration wound down and they prepared to leave, Mrs. Holloway pressed a package into Eliza's hands. "A little something for your wedding night," she whispered with a knowing smile that made Eliza blush. The ride back to the ranch was charged with anticipation. They spoke little, both acutely aware of what awaited them. When they arrived, Adam surprised her by lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "Welcome home, wife," he said, setting her down in the main room that now truly felt like home. "Husband," she replied, testing the word on her tongue and finding she liked it. Later, in the privacy of what was now their bedroom, Eliza unwrapped Mrs. Holloway's gift to find a delicate nightgown of fine cotton trimmed with lace. She changed into it with trembling fingers, nervous despite her usual confidence. When Adam entered the room, his eyes darkened at the sight of her, and for once, Eliza Edwards, now O'Malley, found herself at a loss for words. "You're beautiful," he said simply, crossing to her. His kiss was different from those they'd shared before, deeper, hungrier. Eliza responded in kind, her hands exploring the contours of his shoulders and back as he drew her toward the bed. What followed was a discovery of each other that left them both breathless. Adam was gentle but passionate, and Eliza found herself responding with an intensity that surprised her. In his arms, she didn't need to hide any part of herself, and the freedom of that realization was intoxicating. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms with her head pillowed on his chest, Eliza felt a contentment she'd never known before. "I never expected this," Adam murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Expected what? To feel this way?" "When I sent that advertisement, I was looking for a practical arrangement I never thought I'd find." He hesitated, then finished softly, "Love." The word hung between them, momentous and fragile. "Is that what this is?" Eliza asked, her heart racing. "Love?" Adam's arms tightened around her. "I think it must be. I've never felt anything like it before." Eliza raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes, finding nothing but sincerity there. "I think I love you too, Adam O'Malley." His smile was like the sunrise, breaking across his face and warming her from within. He pulled her down for another kiss, and words became unnecessary as they expressed their newfound feelings in more elemental ways. The weeks that followed were a time of adjustment and deepening bonds. Eliza took to ranch life with determination, learning from Adam about cattle, horses, and the land itself. In turn, she organized the household with efficient grace and continued to provide medical care to neighbors and townsfolk who sought her out. Word of her skills spread beyond Piñon, bringing visitors from as far as Flagstaff seeking treatment. Adam built her a small examination room off the main house, outfitting it with shelves for her growing collection of medicines and a proper examination table he crafted himself. "You're becoming quite the country doctor," he teased one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, his arm around her shoulders. "Does that bother you?" she asked, still sometimes uncertain about how her unconventional role might affect him. "Bother me?" Adam's laugh was warm against her hair. "Eliza, I'm proud of you. What you do helps people. How could that ever bother me?" She leaned into him, marveling at her good fortune in finding a man who saw her abilities as strengths rather than improprieties. Their happiness was tested in early November when a telegram arrived from the sheriff in Flagstaff. 3 cases of diphtheria had been reported in Piñon, and the nearest doctor was overwhelmed with a similar outbreak in Flagstaff. "They're asking for your help," Adam said gravely, handing her the telegram. Eliza read it quickly, her mind already cataloging the supplies she would need. "Diphtheria is highly contagious. You should stay at the line cabin while I work with the patients." Adam's jaw set stubbornly. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone." "Adam, please. I've treated diphtheria before. I know the precautions, but I can't divide my attention between patients and worrying about you." They argued long into the night, but in the end, Adam agreed to help by organizing supplies and assistance without directly exposing himself to the sick. The next 3 weeks were a blur of exhaustion as Eliza worked tirelessly with the afflicted families. The disease had struck hardest among the children, including the Carter boy Jimmy, who had sought their help months earlier. Using techniques she'd learned from her father and his colleague, Eliza implemented strict quarantine procedures and treated the symptoms aggressively. When the crisis finally passed, She had lost only one patient, an elderly man who had been frail before the outbreak. The town's gratitude was overwhelming, but all Eliza wanted was to return home to Adam. He was waiting for her at the edge of their property, having received word that the quarantine had been lifted. When she saw him standing by the gate, Eliza practically fell from her horse into his arms. "Don't ever make me stay away from you like that again," he murmured fiercely against her hair. "I was protecting you," she protested weakly, too exhausted to argue further. "We protect each other," Adam corrected, lifting her onto his horse and mounting behind her so he could hold her as they rode the final distance home. That night, after she'd bathed and eaten the meal he'd prepared, Adam sat beside her on their bed, a small wooden box in his hands. "I made this while you were gone," he said, presenting it to her. Inside, Eliza found a beautifully crafted doctor's bag, the leather tooled with a pattern of desert flowers. Her initials EO were stamped into the flap. "It's beautiful," she whispered, running her fingers over the careful workmanship. "I figured if you're going to be the doctor of Piñon, you should look the part." Eliza looked up at him, her heart so full she could barely speak. "You really don't mind that your wife is what I am?" Adam took her face between his hands, his expression serious. "Eliza O'Malley, I thank God every day for whatever twist of fate brought you to me. Your skills aren't just something I tolerate, they're part of why I love you." As Christmas approached, Eliza began to suspect she was carrying their first child. The signs were subtle at first, but as a medical professional, she recognized them early. She kept the suspicion to herself, wanting to be certain before sharing the news with Adam. On Christmas Eve, with a light dusting of rare snow covering the ranch, they exchanged gifts by the fire. Adam had crafted a rocking chair for her, the wood polished to a warm glow. "For those evenings when you're tired from healing everyone in the county," he explained as she ran her hands over the smooth arms. "It's perfect," she said, her throat tight with emotion. "And perhaps for another reason as well." Adam looked at her questioningly. "It might also be perfect for rocking a baby," Eliza said softly, watching his expression change from confusion to dawning joy. "Eliza, are you saying?" She nodded, tears of happiness filling her eyes. "Come late summer, there will be another O'Malley at the ranch." Adam let out a whoop of joy that probably startled the cattle, then gathered her gently in his arms as if she were made of precious glass. "A baby, our baby. Are you happy?" she asked, though his reaction left little doubt. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He placed a reverent hand on her still flat stomach. "Our child will have the best mother in the Arizona Territory. And the best father," Eliza added, covering his hand with her own. The news of Eliza's pregnancy spread quickly through the community, bringing a steady stream of well-wishers and gifts. Mrs. Holloway appointed herself unofficial guardian of Eliza's health, constantly urging her to rest and eat more. Adam became endearingly protective, insisting on accompanying Eliza whenever she traveled to treat patients. He built in addition to their home 2 new rooms that would serve as a nursery and a proper medical office for Eliza. "So you won't have to choose between caring for our child and helping others," he explained as he showed her the nearly completed rooms in April. As her body changed with the advancing pregnancy, Eliza found herself marveling at this new adventure. For someone who had spent years studying the human body scientifically, experiencing the creation of life within her own was profoundly moving. Adam was fascinated by every change, his hands gentle as they traced the growing curve of her belly, his ear pressed close to feel the baby's movements. "He's strong," he declared one evening as they lay in bed, his palm resting where their child had just kicked. "You're certain it's a boy, just a feeling," Adam said with a smile. "Though I'd be equally happy with a daughter who takes after her mother." "God help you if she does," Eliza teased. "Can you imagine two stubborn women with medical knowledge running your household?" "I can't think of anything better," he replied sincerely. Summer arrived with scorching heat that made Eliza's last months of pregnancy particularly challenging. Adam moved their bed downstairs to the cooler part of the house and rigged a system of wet cloths and open windows that created a surprising amount of relief. In late August, just as Eliza had predicted, she went into labor. Despite her medical knowledge, or perhaps because of it, she found the experience more overwhelming than expected. Adam remained by her side throughout, refusing Mrs. Holloway's insistence that men should wait elsewhere during birthing. "My place is with my wife," he said firmly, holding Eliza's hand as she worked through each contraction. After 18 hours of labor, their son was born a healthy, robust boy with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually settle into the same blue as his father's. They named him Michael Samuel O'Malley, the middle name honoring the farmer whose injury had first revealed Eliza's medical skills to the community. Holding their son between them, Adam and Eliza shared a look of wonder and deep connection. "Thank you," Adam whispered, pressing his forehead to hers, "for coming west, for taking a chance on a stranger, for everything." "I think we've moved well past strangers, Mr. O'Malley," Eliza replied with a tired smile. "Indeed we have, Mrs. O'Malley, indeed we have." The years that followed brought both challenges and joys. Eliza's reputation as a healer continued to grow, eventually gaining recognition from the territorial medical authorities, who, after initial resistance, granted her a special license to practice medicine in recognition of her proven skills and the region's desperate need for qualified medical care. Adam expanded the ranch operations, his success allowing them to hire more help, which, in turn, gave Eliza greater freedom to pursue her medical work. They built a small clinic in town, where she treated patients 2 days each week. Michael was joined by a sister, Emma, 2 years later, and another brother, James, 3 years after that. All 3 children grew up with their mother's intelligence and their father's strong connection to the land. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam surprised Eliza with a journey to San Francisco, where she was invited to speak at a medical conference about frontier medicine. The experience of being recognized professionally by her peers was deeply meaningful to Eliza, but equally moving was Adam's obvious pride as he watched her address the gathered doctors. "I don't think I've ever loved you more than I do right now," he told her as they walked along the San Francisco waterfront that evening. "Because I impressed all those doctors?" Eliza asked with a smile. "Because you've never let anyone tell you what you couldn't do," Adam replied, pulling her close against the ocean breeze. "You came west as a mail-order bride with skills no lady should have, and you built a life that's helped countless people, including me, most of all." As they looked out over the Pacific Ocean, so different from the Arizona desert, they called home. Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The frightened young woman who had stepped off the train in Piñon all those years ago could never have imagined the life awaiting her. "I think," she said thoughtfully, "that sometimes the things society tells us are improper are actually our greatest gifts." "Your father would be proud of you," Adam said, understanding as always the currents of her thoughts. "I like to think so," Eliza agreed. "And I know for certain that our children will grow up understanding that convention should never limit potential, especially our daughter. With you as her mother, how could she think otherwise?" They returned to Piñon, and the ranch that had become more than just a home. It was the center of a community that had embraced Eliza for exactly who she was. The town had grown over the decade, now boasting a school where Michael excelled at mathematics and a proper general store that carried supplies for Eliza's expanding medical practice. In the spring following their anniversary trip, the territorial governor visited Piñon specifically to recognize Eliza's contributions to public health. The ceremony, held in front of the clinic Adam had built for her, drew people from across the region whose lives she had touched. Dr. Eliza O'Malley, the governor announced, using the title she had earned through years of dedicated service, represents the frontier spirit at its finest, resourceful, determined, and dedicated to the well-being of her community. As applause erupted around her, Eliza found Adam's eyes in the crowd. His expression held the same admiration and love she'd first glimpsed years ago when she sutured Samuel Carter's leg. It had never dimmed, if anything. It had grown stronger with each passing year. Later that evening, with their children asleep and the ranch quiet under a canopy of stars, they sat together on the porch of the home they had built, both literally and figuratively. Did you ever imagine, when you placed that advertisement for a bride, that you'd end up with a doctor instead? Eliza asked, leaning against his shoulder. Adam's laugh was warm in the cool night air. I advertised for a partner and I got the best one any man could ask for, even with all my unconventional skills, especially because of them. Adam turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I've been thinking, Eliza. The children are growing up and the ranch is doing well. Maybe it's time we built that proper hospital you've been talking about. Eliza's breath caught. Are you serious? It would be expensive and you'd have to give up some of the grazing land. I'm serious, Adam confirmed. This community needs it, and you've more than proven yourself capable of running it. We could even bring in that young doctor from Boston. You've been corresponding with the one who wants to learn your techniques for treating snake bites. Dr. Bennett. He'd be an excellent addition. Eliza's mind was already racing with possibilities. But Adam, this is your dream to the ranch, the land. My dream is a life with you, he said simply. Everything else is just details. In that moment, under the vast Arizona sky that had witnessed their unlikely beginning and the flourishing of their life together, Eliza knew with absolute certainty that she had found exactly where she belonged. Not despite her unconventional skills, but because of them and because of a man who had seen them not as improprieties, but as the gifts they truly were. I love you, Adam O'Malley, she whispered, leaning in to kiss him. And I love you, Dr. O'Malley, he murmured against her lips. Today, tomorrow, and for all the days to come. The Piñon Valley Hospital opened its doors 2 years later, with Eliza O'Malley as its chief physician and her husband, Adam, as its proudest supporter. Their children grew up understanding that convention should never limit compassion, and that the truest form of love was one that embraced all aspects of a person, especially those parts society deemed unconventional. And in the years that followed, whenever anyone in Piñon County told the story of the mail-order bride who arrived with skills no lady should have, they always finished with the same observation, that the wisest cowboy in Arizona had seen them for what they truly were, not improprieties, but gifts that had changed countless lives for the better, including, most profoundly, his own.